Welcome everyone. I'm a president of International Society of Agronomists, Liping Di from George Mason University, and welcome you everyone to our society's seminar series. And this is going to be first in a series of seminars that discuss latest advanced in the agro informatics technology and also applications. And as a vice president of the society, Burke Augustin, he organized this series. So please notice your email mailing list. We will send as a seminar announcement through the mailing list and also through the website. Current schedule is once every 2 weeks. We're going to have once every 2 months. We're going to have a seminar presented by experts in the field. And so, Burke, can you start to introduce the speaker?
Thank you, Professor Liping. Hello, thank you for joining, and welcome to the first Agronomics live webinar. My name is, as Professor Liping mentioned, Berk Usunda, and I'm joining from Istanbul Technical University, and I'm also the Vice President of ISM. And today we are so excited to welcome you for the first session of Agricultural Information Systems, shortly what we call as Agronomics webinar series. And the first webinar is entitled Digital Twins in Agriculture. And as you know, efficiency management in food and agriculture is becoming a strategic factor, and digital twin concept is appearing as one of the key methods for efficiency management. And today we are going to be exploring the answers for rising questions about digital twins and its applicability in agriculture, besides the possible methodologies. And we have valuable participants from the agricultural community, industry, and academy. And please, after the following part, after this part, please keep your microphones muted. And questions may be asked anytime by utilizing the chat function, and they will be answered by the end of session. And we have a distinguished speaker today, Professor Bedir Tekin Erdoğan, and I have this opportunity to introduce him. And he's a professor and the chairholder of the Information Technology Group at Wageningen University in Netherlands. And as you know, Wageningen University is especially famous with achievements in the field of agricultural technology. And Professor Tekin Erdoğan is one of the leading scientists in digital twin research for agriculture. And for this reason, we have invited him, and it's our pleasure that he will present and evaluate potentials, concerns, and suggestions about digital twins in agriculture. Professor Bedir, it's my pleasure to pass over you right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Berk and Professor Liping. It's my pleasure to give this talk at a webinar. I will share my screen first. Yes, screen. Just now. All the participants also welcome and happy, to see you at least in the list. As Professor Berg said, like I'm the chair of the Information Technology Group at Wageningen University. We are a group who is doing research and education in smart systems and software engineering. This includes also software engineering, data science, and also we also look at the socio-technical aspects. Among our research topics are, of course, digital twins, and this is in particular applied for different application domains, including agriculture, smart farming, precision farming. I will discuss today some of the basics, and at the end look at some of the case studies that we did, in which we applied or investigate how we could apply digital twins. This is a slide with the Surrogates movie. This is a relatively older movie from 2009, I guess. Here, the main character, actually all people have like so-called surrogates, which just live at home. They stay at home, and their surrogates can just go in the life, right? So these surrogates, kind of like androids, they can be controlled and monitored by the people at home. So you actually, and there's a continuous connection with the physical person and the surrogate. So quite interesting movie. But this concept of surrogates or the replica is quite similar to a digital twin. And this idea of surrogates goes even beyond digital twin. But at least we are now talking about digital twins. So if we go back to basics, and so I just the base of very basic, but I'm going to do this quickly, don't worry. Industry 0, agriculture 0 for a long time of the history. We didn't have any industry 4 or whatever. So no ICT, nothing, just 3 million before Christ to 10,000 BC. It was just like what we say Paleolithic, and the older Stone Age and Mesolithic, and the medium. A nomadic lifestyle, hunting and food gathering, and the origin of all people on earth. And then something happened 10,000 before Christ. He said like, okay, let's just settle down. Now we have the agriculture 1.0, farming 1.0. The production, how was it developed? We had problems as human mankind. We had to develop some things. Production, as I tried to show you here, there's a need, typically based on needs, and you develop the artifact. There's no drawing, no whatsoever, no plan, just ID, you develop it. And this could be, of course, was possible for tools and basic artifacts, but not for very large products. Then later on in the history, we got this huge step actually. Design or developing things became more problematic, right? So if you wish to actually develop, for example, larger houses or buildings or bridge, whatever, then you need a kind of drawing. Or you had to draft something, or the design. So then the process became a bit different. So describe a problem, you develop the design, and that's the artifact. And based on the design, you develop the artifact. This was a necessity, right? So you cannot, otherwise, for simple artifacts, you can do directly from your a need and a brain you develop, but for larger artifacts, this is not possible. So here we can say like the previous one was more craft-based development, elementary. This is more design-driven production. So here now we start with the timeline, physical object, very simple needs, simple development process. And then there was a time in the history where we said we need to design blueprint. And based on the blueprint, the objects were developed. This is now actually the situation also in many engineering disciplines, which you say like this is also termed like model-based development, or you have some model or design, and based on that you develop the system for various reasons, of course, like communication, analysis, and guidance, and so on. But that's the situation. And we can use this model for several purposes, as I said. Right? So on one hand, to produce, given a model, production of a model from a system. Right? So if I go back, right? So you look at here, we can actually develop a blueprint, a model. I'm sorry. Right? So a blueprint. So you can just make a drawing of something. Why? to understand it, and then maybe also to redevelop it, right? It goes something like this. So it's like, for example, traffic system. You could say I make a model of it to make sense of the traffic, and then I can the next step could be to control it. The other way is the other way around. It's also possible. You could say, no, I develop a model, right? So, and you develop, and based on the model, as you see here, you can develop your system, a physical system. The previous one is more descriptive. This is more prescriptive. In both cases, we use actually blueprint, right? So what is a blueprint? It's not just a SketchUp, but it's quite detailed. And you can actually look at the diagram, and based on the diagram or based on the design, you try to develop the system as accurate as possible. But the story didn't end there, right? We said like, you could have a sketch. If you look at models, and we can actually categorize them based on the precision. The simplest model, a diagram, could be a sketch, right, like shown here. And typically we do this when we start the discussion, when we also in systems and software engineering, you draw something on the whiteboard or blackboard. And why is that? To actually create ideas and to discuss your ideas. But the next level, as I said, blueprint, that's more detailed design. And you hand this over to the developer or the producer, and that blueprint actually should, your physical artifact should resemble this blueprint. We said like this is called a model-based development. The next more mature level of modeling is the executable level. In this second case, model-based, we actually still use human beings. We have the designer and the developer. So the designer draws the design and hands it over to the developer or the producer, and they develop the system. Here in the executable situation, you develop or write a kind of design or model, and that is handed over to the machine, to the computer or machine, right? So that which actually automatically generates subsequent models or products. In software, it could be like, for example, code generation, test case generation, document generation, anything. 3D printing is also an example of this. Given kind of model, you can create something. So 3 models that we have seen throughout the history, starting with no model from the agricultural perspective, and then the design-based. Design-based, we said like simple sketch and blueprint. And the last one, executable, which is actually termed like, if you use that, model-driven development. This one is called actually model-based, if you use blueprints. Model-based development. Model-driven is you actually go one step further. You say like, I don't need a human being, I can automatically generate. So fine, so far so good. But there's still a problem, right? We follow kind of life cycle. We start with requirements analysis. This is not necessarily waterfall model, but you have some steps, and then in the end, a product is developed. That's the traditional way of development, model-based or model-driven, whatsoever. But then we lose the connection with the product. It's lost, right? So we have the life cycle development process, product is developed, and it's lost. So you cannot monitor it, you cannot control it, and you cannot do anything with it. And that's exactly where the digital twin steps in. So digital twin is not a hype, it's not a temporary hype. If you look from the historical perspective, it is just at the right moment. It's just the next intellectual thinking about modeling. So that's my perspective today. You can explain it from different perspectives. I explain it from a modeling perspective. What is a digital twin? Well, it's a model, but it's a digital replica. It looks like a blueprint because we said like blueprint is also kind of, the blueprint is the same print or the similar diagram that resembles the physical object based on which the physical object is created. But this one is directly connected the physical to the physical object. Unlike what the initial the surrogates, they were directly connected on real time, right? So physical object for that doing that physical object typically should have some sensors on it, and these sensors should observe the physical object, and the observed the state is actually submitted to the digital twin, real time, sometimes near real time. What does the digital twin do? Well, it has a representation of the physical object, but it can have what we say rich representation, not just shallow, quite rich representations, semantically rich representations that can be used to make sense of the physical object, to actually also monitor and control, to do simulations and many different purposes. That is quite interesting. Well, then the question is like, well, okay, if you look at this, so no model, informal model, blueprint model, executable model, connect the models. Well, not a big idea. Actually, you would say, couldn't we think about this before? Yes, we could, but simply put, it was not possible to have this, right? It became possible. By the way, the concepts are also described in these two papers, so you can look at it. And the digital twin, right? This is actually goes over the whole life cycle, right? So it's not like you don't get rid of it. It starts with the concepts, conceptualization, ideation, or design, realization, use, retirement, even the retirement, right? So not just usage, but even after retirement of the physical object, the digital twin can still continue working. And that also creates interesting ideas. But what I said, so the continued connection with physical object, yeah, that's as I say, how was this possible? And again, that's the next slide. I was too early. So just a summary here, over the whole time. That's what my own perspective here. So no model, the whole story, and then the physical object sketch model, blueprint model, and here we have like the model-based development, and like we had like model-based software engineering, and now in systems engineering they try to mimic that, and it's a very good direction, model-based systems engineering. But we can even go beyond, so more like model-driven, generative-based. Right? So then, and it's like it's possible. And then the next level, the more mature level, the recent level is like the digital twin-based. Now, then there comes the answer on my question: how was this all possible? And it became possible just because of the advancements in digitalization. 20 years ago, I always give these examples to my students. When I was a student in the 1980s, started in 1988, 89, I could buy a computer. First, it was too expensive. Computer had like 30 megabyte storage, and the clock was just a single core computer, black-white monitor, very small. So it was very, and ended up big, right? But things have changed, right? So the Moore's law said, like in the 70s, it will the number of transistors on IC integrated circuits will double every 18 months. It happened like that. So the computation power increased a lot. It became cheaper, became larger, it became smaller. The clock speed became a lot dramatically increased. That all has led. I started with digitization. We said, like, let's first digitize the documents and put it in binary format. Then we had, like, based on that, later on different digital solutions, including AI, machine learning, deep learning throughout the whole last decades in software engineering. And that has led, what we say, to disruptive changes in society, in different disciplines, in the way how we live, how we work. It has had an impact in the banking, in the insurance domain, in the defense, and also in the life sciences, in the agriculture. Now we talk about pervasive computing, or ubiquitous computing. Computing is everywhere, and this will not stop. It will just be a lot, right? A lot more, right? Cloud computing, machine learning, big data, all these blockchain, not all as are listed here, but all together has led to the idea of smart systems and digital twin, and the idea of connecting to, the digital replica with the physical object continuously, and even controlling the physical object has just become possible because of the advancements in computing. Also in life science, I say, right? So a nice anecdote. I started in 2015 at Wageningen University. I said like, well, a colleague said like, well, what are you doing? You should go to Delft or Eindhoven, right? So, but it's just a matter of vision, right? So it is like, it would impact the life sciences. That was the vision. And indeed, in 2016, we had like, DS Natalis, digitalization of life science. That was the topic. And later on, there's many applications in the agriculture we have seen. Also a dramatic growth of my own group. So there's also, it will have an impact. It impacts the agriculture domain. Back to digital twins. Digital twins, we said like, is a digital replica of physical object. Well, what is the physical object? Well, it could be a simple component. I like what they do in systems engineering. It starts even with in the airspace domain. It was difficult to actually control these components, so they make simulations of these components. Could be at system level, subsystem, system level. So there could be different levels, a system of systems level even, and it could be even at a process level. So then you can focus on process improvement, different applications. The things that I discuss here today are described also in these two papers. And the right one is discuss more the concepts, the ontology, what is digital twin, and also applied in smart farming. The left one focuses more from an engineering perspective. What does it mean if I design or engineer a digital twin-based system? And here we have focused on so-called digital twin patterns, which I will explain in the subsequent slides. And as a follow, we had two more papers we looked at because our research just continues, and there will be even more papers in this year and also next year, because we have it's one of our active research. Not only this one, there are also other activities. We have looked at greenhouses, and also now currently also busy with predictive maintenance for using digital twins. Many opportunities there, very interesting. We are developing, and we will also develop primary studies like digital twins for predictive maintenance. That will be a follow-up. Okay, so if you engineer digital twins, we have actually used the notion of control systems, and starting with physical object. What's a control system? Well, if you want to control something, you have to monitor it, you have to sense it, you have to observe it. So you have like sensors. And what do you do with these sense data? Well, you compare it with respect to some goal, right? So you could say like, I sense the temperature of the room, right? And then you could say it should be at 20 degrees, not too hot, not too cold, and you compare it, and then you could say, well, it says like 15 degrees, that's a delta. Then you say this, the heater up, and you have activated the heater, which actually heats the physical object, the room. A control system. A conceptual, there are different, of course, control system architectures, but this is at the higher level. This is it. On the one hand, sensing; on the other hand, activating, of course, and it's also typically decision-making process. How does this apply to digital twin? Is that like, well, we have physical object, and well, this is the control system. There are different examples. I gave already example. Thermostat, the car, it's everywhere now. And also because of digitalization, you can also see like smart control systems everywhere. So how does it apply to digital twins? Well, physical object, we have it there. the physical object should be sensed and controlled. Excuse me. And the digital object is at what we say digital object space. Here we have we talk about one physical object, one digital object. You could have also many. It's possible. There are different combinations. You get the physical object state. That's typical digital object adapter. We called it, and that goes to the digital object that checks the with respect to the goal, and then it checks what the delta is, the difference with the expected goal value, metric value, and what's the real situation, and then you decide on some action. You send the action to the actuator, and the actuator can actually act on the physical object. Actuator or effector also called. So he said, like, well, these LMS are kind of separate like that. There could be different combinations, but typically, and the whole, of course, decision making could be quite extensive, semantically rich. Representation of physical object could be very rich. You could have here analytics, the descriptive, prescriptive analytics, as it could be backed up with machine learning, deep learning, etc. Control-based digital twin architecture. Well, if you talk about digital twin, it's good to look at, also know the terms. And this, we actually borrowed it also from this paper, not written by us, but it's quite nice. Physical object, virtual object, so physical object or digital twin. Now we have the physical environment and the virtual environment, the state of the physical object, but could be also of the digital realization, changing the state of physical or virtual or digital twin. Metrology, that of course the measurement, the twinning. As I said, these objects are connected to each other. So is that like real time or near real time? Thus, that's called twinning. What's the twinning rate? And that's the next level, the rate at which twinning occurs. And preferably you want to have a real time or near real time, because then you have a close control. Physical to virtual connection twinning, and you can do it like I check the physical state and synchronize the digital twin based on that, or vice versa. And several other concepts can be found here, but these concepts are enough for this presentation. Well, this is our conceptual model for digital twins in, we said, like systems engineering. Like, let's look at not at software, but any other, but at the systems perspective. And we see here, like, well, systems engineering builds a system, adopts a life cycle. It has its own life cycle state. If you have a digital twin-based system, it's just a system. So you actually want to do a digital twin-based systems engineering. So you have to develop the digital twin, and which you have the physical object, which means like you have challenge like, what should be my representation of physical object, how to sense, how to activate, how to do the decision making, and so on. Digital twin, like each system has an architecture that is used, what we say architecture patterns. I will explain the next slide. That is like recurring, nice generic solution for generic solution for recurring problems. And then the question is like, what we start is like, well, are there any system architecture digital twin patterns? Well, since digital twin based systems engineering is an engineering process, and engineering is a problem solving process, and in problem solving, mature problem solving, we always focus on we use generic solutions to recurring problems. Well, that is also probably the case here. That's what we said. Okay, then we said, okay, let's identify these patterns and let's collect these and let's store it and make it reusable, because that's what patterns are for. If they are not reusable, they don't become really a design pattern. So that's what we did. What is a design pattern? It's a combination of problem solution and context. A novice designer if he or she starts at the project, doesn't know many patterns, right? Hasn't seen many solutions, many projects. But an expert has many patterns in his or her brains, because that means like they see that some problems they have seen these problems before, right? Recurring problem. So we don't solve new problems each day. Often, very often, most of our time, the problems that we solve are just recurring. We have seen it before, if you have experience. And for this recurring problem, you have like typically generic solutions. Well, if you have that in engineering, you can just store that, right? And identify it and store it, which has been done in the software engineering and systems engineering community. You have, for example, the layers pattern, which says like, typically that's the way how we decompose and structure systems, which consist of lower to higher level abstraction models. And then there we put a rule like, well, like the layer, each layer can only access the next lower layer, no layer bridging, no callbacks. For example, in many enterprise systems, we have this situation: UI or presentation layer, business layer, database layer, and that's the software modules are in here. You don't here have, like, for example, modules relate to database access, and the UI does not directly access the database. And so it's a way to support portability, interoperability, reuse, etc. At the lower level, design patterns level, we have, like, I need to be quick, 23 patterns, object-oriented design. Here's an example. The client, sometimes you have to reuse some components, but the interface doesn't match. So what should you do? Use the adapter path. It says like, just inherit from the target and the interface that you want, and then make a link to the adaptee object. And this one is then implemented. I explained this fast, sorry, but then you have the return adaptee specific request. So in this way, this adapter object adapter design pattern, you have solved the interface differences. And there are like 23 other design patterns. There are different analysis patterns, requirements patterns everywhere. What about the digital twins? Well, we have also patterns there. We could find them explained here. Systems architecture design pattern catalog for developing digital twins. And then we said, like, documentation of patterns is important, I said. So we documented like this, has a name. We focus on the systems engineering. So we said, like, which life cycle stage can this pattern be used? The context, the problem, the solution, and then we look at the static structure. And we show that with the object-oriented class. I will show in the next slides, and the workflow perspective, the dynamics. Let's look at them one by one. First of all, a conceptual diagram. And we looked at what are actually the key relations, and that's the question. Well, digital object, physical object, and then we looked at what are the relations. Well, yeah, you could have a data flow that could be manual or automatic. In the very basic situation, the directions are manual. In the strict sense, this is not a digital twin, of course, but it's more like what we say model-based, and you could use a blueprint. But you could also, from the digital object, you could have automatic. Then you like more model-driven, generative, or vice versa. You could actually reverse engineer a physical object and make a digital object. In the strict sense of a digital twin, directly connected, and that's this one. But this is a conceptual. We said we did more than that. We looked also more at the specific problems. So we identified recurring problems. One problem, a digital model pattern, which, although this is not strictly speaking digital twin, we said, like, but still it fits in the whole way of modeling. Well, the problem is, like, based on some model, a digital model, the physical objects needs to be created. And here you see it's shown like here, the client digital twin, concrete digital twin. You could have the different kind of blueprints, and the client develops the physical object. And this is all, and this is more the dynamic diagram, a scenario interaction diagram. client, it gets the blueprint from the digital twin, get the blueprint, and you develop it, but it's manual. The first pattern, right? It's and many projects just use that. If you put a generator, automated, and then we said like, well, there's no digital. You just ask the digital twin to generate the physical object, and then the physical object is generated. See, so here you don't have the human being in the loop. Second pattern. Third pattern, we said like, well, for a given physical object, sometimes we need to develop a digital twin, a model, and then it could be like reverse engineering, also like machine vision, computer vision. We said like, oh, let me check the physical object and then state and develop the digital object. We called this a digital shadow pattern, and the third pattern. Fourth pattern, we said like, well, sometimes I have a recurring problem with like, I have a digital model and I want to wish to track the physical object and find the physical object which actually matches with the representation of my digital replica, digital model. A different problem, different solution structure. And this is a static model, and this is a dynamic model. If I show you here, search blueprint based on digital twin. This is in the physical environment. The physical environment could consist of many physical objects. And then you find the you do a matchmaking, right? That's and we call this digital matching pattern. And we term these patterns ourselves. The name of this pattern. Digital proxy pattern. We said like, so let's us develop again a different problem. I have a physical object, but sometimes it's not easy to directly access that physical object. Sometimes you are not allowed to access or update that physical object. Then it happens in different projects. Then you could say, you could use a kind of digital twin as a proxy. And the digital twin can communicate, can get the messages on behalf of the physical object. This is a pattern borrowed from the object-oriented design patterns. There you have the proxy pattern, just a similar problem. We applied it, we customized it to the digital twin context. But in essence, the mechanism is the same. You can like digital twin get some service before the physical object. It can do some pre-processing, translating, whatever, access control, concurrency control, and then it can ask the service to the physical object. After that, it can do post-processing. And then, of course, the synchronization step, which belongs to the digital twin concept. Yet another pattern, digital restoration. It said like physical objects, many things can collapse, right? So, and you want to often recover, right? So, what do you do? What can you do? So it's sometimes also very expensive. So you could use a digital twin, a digital object, to check the state of that physical object. You store it continuously, and then if the physical object collapses, right, or then you could at some point just restore the state, and you can restore the physical object. Different recurring problem, and this is the generic solution. We call this digital restoration pattern. Digital monitor pattern, I said like, so you have like digital object, digital twin, and a physical twin. That's not the actually strict definition of digital twin. You get the state of the physical object, typically implemented through by sensors, and then you get the state. You set the state of the digital view. Digital view, you could have different view of the physical object. So these are synchronized, and of course we said like it should be real time or near real time. So this part will be all, of course, real time. It does not control, it does not do something to the physical object, it just monitors, observes the system. The next step, more advanced step, is like observe and do some action. Here we have like, besides of the sensors, we have also the actuators. We put it there. This is the workflow, right? Physical object, digital twin, and you get the state, and then you actually provide the state to the comparator, and then the comparator decides on the action, and using the actuator, it actually performs on the action on the physical object. Digital control pattern, right? So what we term, and we could say, well, this is all a bit like done this decision, this and that. You could also have the situation where you say like the physical object is automatically controlled without any human intervention, and then all these processes, including the sensing, the comparison, decision making, and the actuation, is all done automatically. We call this the digital autonomy pattern. Yeah, you could find different solutions for that. Yeah? So, okay, to summarize, then we have, like I said, there we have listed 9 different patterns, digital twin patterns, with both the static structure and dynamic structure, each providing a generic solution to recurring problems: digital model, digital generator, digital shadow, digital matching, proxy, restoration. So all of these are like problem solving, problem solution combination, and 3 more: digital monitor, I just observe; digital control, you also adapt; and digital autonomy, you have autonomous smart systems. That's the focus on the patterns. And then we said, we also looked at the systems engineering stage. In which stages can we apply these digital twin patterns? We actually allocate like that. So digital model, shadow, generator can be used as concept stage, and development stage, production stage, also the same. In the utilization and support stage, right? So the system is running and you support it. You can use also matching, restoration, autonomy. Retirement stage, we can say like, well, the physical object is dead, doesn't exist anymore, but the digital proxy can still live forever. What about agriculture? Did we apply? Yes, of course, because like any digital solution, also digital twin can be applied and usefully applied in a useful manner. For that, we did a case study. We applied some protocols. To which extent does the defined digital patterns support the system architecture? How practical is it? And then data collection, analysis, etc. So we applied actually to the case studies of the so-called IOF project, where we had we focused on 3 key case studies within field management zoning: the arable farming, and then the dairy farming, and more the greenhouses. And we looked at these actually from a retrospective perspective, because these projects were actually developed and finalized. But we said, like, what if we would have applied these digital twins? To what extent could we have used? But some actually project also already used some of our patterns. I mean, like these problem solution structures. And this was the solution and the results, right? So 3 case studies, and well, most of them actually use kind of digital shadow, digital matching, right? Because you could say you check digital proxy on behalf of the physical object. Restoration was just used here in the greenhouses, but none of them actually used like digital autonomy. This gives us the idea that, hey, these digital twins patterns, they make sense. We believe that there are also other patterns can be identified. It depends on the problem solution structure, and we are busy also with that. For example, on our predictive maintenance, we will identify predictive maintenance patterns, digital twin patterns, but in a similar sense, other problem solution structures pairs could be found. If I have time, we applied this also in our project very quickly. I will go quickly over it. This was applied so within our group, and these are our staff members. For Tarek, so each of them actually developed some of these projects. For example, digital twins for energy informatics, very useful. under more for population monitoring and trends, some for the wildlife. Some of these are masters, some are PhD projects. I will go quickly over it. Digital twin of cannabis farm, right? So including also integrated by Will Hurst, our colleague. By Qingji Liu, a small poultry farm using digital twins. Apple orchard yield estimation, harvest prediction by our colleague Joao Valente. Really like, I'd say here also like the sensing was done using drones and put on the cloud digital twin. And together with Core, we also looked at the greenhouse horticulture. Yes, and it is it's ongoing. Ongoing research, active research. I try to put the whole concept, the ontology, the patterns ID, engineering ID is not just hype. If there are possibilities for doing this, and we as a group, we will continue with this, of course. Thank you for your attention, and I can take questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Professor Bedir. Are there any questions from the audience? At least I have some questions at the moment.
Yes.
Meanwhile, before that, Mustafa I asks, are there concrete digital twin applications in agriculture?
Yeah, it's what I tried to show that with these slides, what we have from our own group, there are, of course, and these are also have been developed also, right? Like in energy informatics, and then here the wildlife and the cannabis farm, greenhouses, but they are all have been all developed using the concepts that I've discussed before. Yes, there are, and there will be. It's still continuing also.
Yeah. In one of the applications, I saw that possibly you also applied the plant growth model. If you please return to one of the previous slides. I guess some more, not this one, not this one. Yes, here. The next.
And this is next or previous?
Yes, here, this one. For example, you say the orchard tree digital twin. Do you apply the plant growth model per each unit, or what is the level of twinning here? The field or each plant base or the farm?
And that's a good question. No, it's not. Yeah, given of course the performance, this was more on the field, right? So, and then you have these challenges, right? So, do I have computation power? No. Then you should look at the field level. So a map is made. So we said like what a digital twin has a rich representation. You make a rich representation of the field, and based on that, you make some decisions. But in essence, you could, in theory, you could also do per object. But of course, then it's like the twinning rate, the performance, the computation, and so on increases. That's of course the challenge. Storage could be also a problem, but usually it's not. But the computation, especially if you want to do also real time, that's what I know. Right.
Okay. And there is another question: if there are any digital twinning, wetland, peatland, and what are the platforms that they could use for the UAV data?
We did not use any of that domain, wetland, peatland. No, I cannot answer that. Sorry.
So, how do you suggest about the progress? I mean, for example, if a farmer like to use and take benefit of digital twin, will they need a platform? Because individually they cannot invest for that, because they will need a sort of engine besides a data processing system behind that. Each farmer cannot invest for that in practice, but there could be a sort of business based on cloud services, possibly totally platform as a service. How do you suggest about the progress? What should be the commercialization or the application roadmap for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So of course, in precision farming or smart farming, that's also what we observe sometimes. You have all this technology, but then there's the acceptability level, or also from economic perspective. They cannot afford it sometimes, but and also the societal, what we say, relevance level or acceptance level. It's not just what we say TRL, technology readiness level, but also societal readiness level. So from the technology perspective, it's possible, and then you say like it should be also socially acceptable. What you can do, or what is done, is like, of course, digital twin. You have to decide on the representation of the physical object. It can be very rich. You have to decide on a few parameters. Then you decide, and then you have to decide on decision-making process. You could have very full intelligent analytics process or not. You see, it depends also on what you wish to develop and what you want to solve. On the other hand, there are also already platforms like Eclipse has a kind of platform for developing digital twins. What was its name? I forgot the name now, but you can just download that on the Eclipse platform, and then based on that you could develop it. But indeed, yeah. So it is not commercial. It is open source. I know that they have stopped the maintenance, I guess, but so there are platforms indeed. Or what we did also often, we developed our own digital twin in its software, or in the virtual reality situation, also in that environment.
Okay. And you mentioned about the states. Before that, there is another question. Is the UAV data transferred to the cloud and processed over there? Then the results are shown and based on
yes
on it in
in this particular
in
this particular situation, it was like that indeed. So it's like more asynchronous. So it's stored on the cloud because, again, depends on the problem. It was not needed to do a real time, right? So you can just store it on the cloud, and then on the cloud you can have the processing of the data is done later. You see, so there we also see the distinction between the sensing and the processing. You can sense the data even real time and store it, but the processing you can still wait. And that's the twinning rate. It's different from the processing rate.
Yeah. Another question is again about crop growth. Can it be modeled so that the meteorological risk analysis could be a digital twin outcome?
Yeah, so I'm thinking, of course it can. Then you should decide on the level of the digital twin. Is it per crop or per field, right? Or per part of the field? And also the problem, what kind of problems do you wish to solve? We just want also the monitor. In our case, it's monitor, control, or check it, right? So, and based on that, it's possible, right? And they could say, I want to control the growth. Typically, the growth is not that, doesn't need to be real time. I mean, so you can store the data and then process it later. So what you should do always is like first the proper problem analysis. That counts not only for digital twins, but also for any digital solution. What is my problem? And make that clear. In that, and then you check what kind of solution do I need? You see, so because and the patterns that we have also reason from that perspective. What is your problem? You don't need all these patterns, right? You just say, just check your problem, and based on this problem, identify the pattern, apply the pattern. Right?
And
That's what I
Dr.
can.
Young asks if there is a best practice for developing the digital twin for a dynamic agricultural process.
It's ongoing research, right? Dynamic. I don't know what you exactly mean with dynamic agriculture. All these processes are actually dynamic. I mean, and in the what you want to
You may
yeah,
probably consider the time you may consider not only nonlinearity but also time varying characteristics besides the nonlinearity.
oh yeah. Yeah.
Would it
Yes.
be possible to be updated or adapted through reinforcement and so on?
That's a nice question. Nice.
Model also have increasing amount of states or changing amount of states, not only the existing states.
Yeah. That's really an interesting question. What we see, like for example, take machine learning, deep learning. So often, like we have indeed we try to find the cause-effect relation. Very often, you have like a few parameters, even just to cause-effect, and then you say like we looked at the linear relation, but in essence, of course, in reality is complex, and complex. We use the term complex adaptive systems. There are many variables can exist, and there can be feedback loops. To make sense of this, it's not easy. We haven't looked into applying digital twins for that process, but for making sense of complex adaptive systems or nonlinear systems, we have looked at, for example, agent-based modeling, system dynamics, which actually uses these things, and you like system dynamics, you have the different variables, and you check what are the cause-effect relations, and there are also simulation tools that you can use. Agent-based modeling is focused more on the agent perspective. That's what we have. But for digital twins, it could be interesting to combine these different system dynamics approaches or systems thinking approaches, also like including agent-based modeling with digital twins models. See, so the question actually raises another question. That actually creates a new vision. And that's what I can say. So for now, it's like digital twin, and so typically representing and observing, controlling. But you could say I will develop digital twins to make sense of the overall system. And then the close concepts are systems dynamics, agent-based modeling. And even then, that also requires like the AI, the current machine learning, deep learning, should also be extended from that perspective.
And Dr. Geo has a comment that modeling is still a crucial part of the tuning technology.
Yes.
And if you could comment on uncertainty of modeling and the measurements, is that Dr. Feng is asking that what is the real difference between digital twin and the crop model? Because you can simulate also the crop model and match it. And what makes digital twin different from the crop model in real time?
Yeah, the difference is, of course, the strict definition is the symbiotic connection, right? So it is, you don't lose the connection, you don't lose the coupling. And you could say, if your problem is like, I don't need to have a real-time connection or near real-time, I just need to make a nice model, which I update now and then, and that the focus will be on the analytics and the evaluation, for what purpose you develop your crop model. That could be fine enough, but if you say like I have a digital twin in the very strict sense, it means like that you have a direct coupling and you don't lose the coupling even after the object retires. So that's the difference. And then you say that, of course, it's like if you lose the connection, as I said, you have the digital model pattern. In essence, is the traditional way of modeling, right? Or digital generator pattern is like that's the traditional way of model driven development. But if you say like, no, I have a sensor and actuator and real time, that's the very strict definition of digital twin. And there again, you should check like what is my problem and to what extent should I apply this. Regarding the uncertainty, that's certainly definitely also an interesting question.
Yeah.
But
one of the assumptions about that could be usually in simulation or real-time models, we assume that uniform sample data exists. But rather than that, digital twin models also care about context awareness that is represented by the states. So states transitions are becoming to the front side rather than the uniformly sampled data. So even though you have non-uniform data, and even for the future probably unstructured data, you could be synchronizing the model with the real system. So it may be possibly the main difference, because models are representing through the mathematical differential equations or their equivalent other types of abstracts. So
yes.
Then Dr. Geo's question is linked about that, how uncertainty of the model could be managed, and what should be the measurement level about that. Is there a requirement of uniform sampling? What happens if you lose some of the data, for example?
No. There's no specific requirement, right? So digital twin concept is still quite broad, and it also depends on the current computation knowledge that we have, including also system software engineering, AI, machine learning. So what I've shown is the generic template and in the elements, but you could say like I will use, for example, fuzzy reasoning in my digital twin approach. It's possible. There's no restriction to that. And so I would say it's open-ended. But it's, of course, these are indeed the challenges, and some of these challenges, they are not just related to digital twins, but they are the well-known, the previous challenges when we design, develop systems, or when we try to reason about some systems, right?
Existing mathematical models provide us a sort of initiation, but on the other hand, nonlinearity and the time-varying characteristics, especially in agriculture, is quite high. So digital twin may be helpful in near future by providing us some templates so that we can have some common scale. So scale becomes important, and amount of states is a matter of scale for better and reasonable management. Are there any questions or comments? Or if you would like to add some other thing, Professor Bedir?
No, I don't have any further questions on this part. For us, it's also ongoing research. We try to make sense of how we could apply predictive maintenance to different systems, because it's very often now all these systems have to be operated 7 days at 24 hours, then maintenance becomes a problem. And we say, how can we use that? So, but different problems might require different solutions. Yeah.
Especially Dr. Frank's question, we are also making a comparison. What happens if we, for example, schedule the irrigation plan, depending on the existing crop growth model and irrigation models, with respect to a digital twin model. In longer term, we see some differences because of adaptation of models. Some people consider, okay, you could use the adapted models. But on the other hand, there is a slight difference because of the structured manner of the data and the other type of adaptation in near real time or near real time, as you mentioned, in synchronization between the real system and the existing system.
Yes.
So, thank you for your participation.
I have a question,
okay.
if you have time, Berk.
Yes, sure.
Oh, Professor Tekin Erdoğan, thank you very much for your speech. I would like to hear more about your application side of the story, but the time wouldn't allow this, obviously. I have a question about the system architecture design pattern.
Yes.
You have an analogy between the system design, system architecture design pattern and software development patterns.
Yes.
In software development patterns, we usually select one of the patterns that match our cases and we stick to it. However, in digital twins, is it possible to start with one of the models and proceed with the next stage, another stage, for example, starting with digital model, then go to digital generator or digital restoration? Is it possible, or is it exactly the same by means of the constraints on this model selection at the very beginning?
No, good question. So the idea is like, this is what we say a digital twin catalog. And the catalog is typically like an independent set of patterns, which you just look at and you find the pattern that is useful for you. But you could say like, how do I actually, what is the order? Is there some order of these patterns? Well, if you say like, not necessarily, but you could start with digital model because it's like a manual. You use that, and based on that you develop. You could, and the next step could be automate the generation process. Then you end up with digital generator, and in the digital generation you could say like, oh, with that the digital twin, I will put additional functionality. I will put the functionality to match. Then you get the digital matching pattern, or I will do the proxy. So from a engineering perspective, it could be there could be some order, but the patterns as such have not been designed with that in mind. Indeed, so read the book of Christopher Alexander. He talks about pattern language. It stops at the highest level, and then all these patterns are related, and you typically start at the highest abstraction level until the lowest, which is not the case here. So this is just a catalog. That we called it a catalog of patterns, and we believe there can be other patterns, plus the idea of the process and the workflow. Definitely interesting. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. We really thank you, Peter. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you.
We have at least now some idea about current progress of the state of the art related terminology about digital twin and its possible movement or progress in agriculture. And I also thank to this nice community from ISAM especially, and suggest other participants to be registered to ISAM so that they can be aware of the next future coming webinars and other benefits of the ISAM. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a nice night in China and have a nice day in US. Hope to see you soon in the forthcoming other webinar.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice day. Thank you all. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.